Hi, and welcome to the Speedy Inventory app tutorial. My name's Rob, and I'll be leading you through the tutorial. As you know, the Speedy system is a modern moving inventory system revolutionizing the moving industry. Today's tutorial is about the Speedy Moving app. I'll be showing you the system flow and most of the features. And I'll be showing the Android version, but the iOS version is identical. As you can see, I have the login screen up. You should have gotten your login credentials when you signed up your company on the web or your company management provided you with the credentials. If you don't have credentials or you haven't signed up, you can go to www.speedymovinginventory.com to do so. After you log in, you'll see the list of jobs you're assigned to. In my case, I'm only assigned to one job, number 1 for Karen Burden. But in your case, you may have more than one job. After you see the list, you just tap on the job you're interested to view. After we click on the job, we see the job detailed information. It contains all the relevant background information about the job. In the upper left-hand corner, we can see the customer's email address that we can tap on and send her an email. We can also tap on the customer phone number and call the customer. There's also a pickup address and a delivery window address that we can tap and get directions through Google Maps. So here's an example. We tapped on the delivery address, and that address is in Redlands, California. And so we launched Google Maps, and we can get driving directions to the delivery address. We could have done the same thing with the pickup address. The app's all integrated with the normal Google utilities on Android and the iOS utilities on iOS. And now we're back at the job summary page. In the upper right of the job summary page, it shows the job status. Whether the job is new or loaded for storage or in storage or loaded for delivery or even delivered. And we can also click on the Details tab. And here, this job's details, there are no moving items because we've just started. Here's where the app really starts to get used. Before we arrive at the job site, we use the Speedy web interface to print off scannable labels for the job. Here's an example of some of the labels. Each has a peelable back, and we attach one to each moving inventory item. This allows them to be scanned for initial entry and each job status change. As an example, I've attached one of the labels to a small filing box. I'll show how we scan and enter each item. At the bottom right of the job details page, you can see two blue circle buttons. The one on the right is for item scanning, and the one on the left is for job sign-on. We press the one on the right to launch the device's camera in scanning mode. We point the camera to the code, and we'll hear a scan tone and the device vibrate to indicate a successful scan. After a successful scan, we are presented with a list of standard moving items. The items are scoped to the room assignment. Notice the label Bedroom 1 in the upper right of the screen. We can press that to change the room assignment to Office, since we are currently in the office. That brings up a slightly different list of items that would typically be found in the office. We can browse the items, or we can also filter the items by typing in the list at the top. Once we select an item, the description along with the default cubic feet and weight for the item are entered as we see on this screen. On this screen, a number of other data attributes can be entered for the item. If the item has visible damage, it can be noted here. If the item required disassembly, it can also be noted. We can enter who packed the item. We can also enter any special handling notes for the item. In this case, the item is a box. But for items that are not boxes, we also are able to enter the number of pads required to pack the item. Finally, we can also document the item with photographs. To do that, we launch the camera with the circle button at the lower right of the screen. The device's camera is launched this time to take a picture of the item. So we get our picture that we like. We choose OK to select. And we're back at the item and the picture shows up. Now we're back at the job details and we can see the one item that we have entered. All the other items we entered in the same way. And you can have any number of crew members labeling, scanning, and entering items. They can all work in parallel. And best of all, you don't need any special hardware. Now we've just fast forwarded to where we've entered all the items for this move. There's only 8 items, but that's enough for our tutorial. And once again, we're back at the Job Details tab. As you can see, all the items are shown as either a box, if they're a box, or the first photo taken if they were documented by a photo. At this point, the job status is still new, and we can modify any of the item's attributes. Simply by touching an item, we can bring up its details. We'll do that for the dressing table, as we notice it has some scratches, and we'd like to note them so it's clear the damage existed at pickup, and we won't be blamed for it. So we enter the job damage description to indicate that it has scratches. And then we go back to the job details page. The next step, now that all the items are scanned and loaded in the truck, is to get the customer's sign-off. As with everything else, we get the sign-off electronically. We launch a sign-off page with the button at the bottom of the page. It's the one with the image of a fountain pen. The sign-off page shows summary information for the job. It shows both the movers and shippers information. It shows the job status. It also summarizes the number of items and total value. At the bottom of the screen, the customer enters their name and signature. Sign-off is complete. We're back at the job details screen, but now the job status has transitioned to loaded for storage, as you can see in the upper right. All the items are still shown, and we can get the details of an item by touching the item, but there's a difference. All the original information is there, but you can't change it. We can enter new information related to damage and claims. We can also add new photos, but we can't delete any existing ones. We mark an item as damaged with the claim, and then when we go back to the job details, we can see it has a yellow triangle in it. Items with claims are marked with the yellow triangle exclamation point. Once a job has been signed off, we can actually print the sign-off sheet using the menus in the upper right. Here's an example. We'll print the loaded for storage sign-off. This uses the standard Android interfaces to printers. So if your Android device is hooked up to a printer, you can print. Any printer will do. The job status is now loaded for storage. That means all the items are on the truck and we're in transit to the storage location. When we arrive and unload at the storage, we'll rescan all the items and the foreman will sign off. We'll illustrate the process next. Once an item is scanned, it gets a green check like the box of files shown here. So we'll go through and scan all the items offline. Notice that we didn't scan all the items. The medium box doesn't actually have a green check. One easy way to figure out which items aren't scanned are simply sort by scanned, and then the ones that aren't scanned will appear in the upper left. And maybe the item wasn't scanned because the label got scratched or fell off the item. But that's okay because we can use the scan override on the item details to actually override the scanner and force the item to be scanned even if we don't have a label. Now all the items are scanned and we can sign off on this phase. So we launch the sign off screen. In this case, it's the foreman who signs off because we're going from the truck to storage. So the foreman enters his name and his signature and we record. And the job sign-off is complete, and now the status is in storage. The job moves through the rest of the statuses in the same way. Items are scanned at every step until the job is delivered. We'll spare you the details of all the steps. So now let's just pretend the job is delivered and we're done. That's all for this tutorial. Thanks for listening. For more details on the Speedy system, visit www.speedymovinginventory.com.